My boss benched me a week before the 80-mile-per-hour board vote, then opened my deck like he owned it. I never thought I'd write this down, but maybe it'll make sense to someone else who's been blindsided. I'd spent 14 months on one contract. 14 months of building a model, line by line, chasing vendors across time zones, fighting through compliance red tape, reshaping forecasts until every number could stand up in a courtroom. It wasn't just another deal, it was the deal. $80 million, long-term services, reputational gold. Everyone at the company knew whoever closed it would have their career set for a decade. And until the final week, that person was supposed to be me. Then came the shuffle. My boss, let's call him Patterson, was the kind of executive who knew how to walk into a room and own it with a grin. Expensive shoes, golf course handshake, the right jokes about the right people. But beneath the charm was a man who hated one thing, not being the center of credit. My job had been to do the work while he steered the vision. Fair enough, that's management. But as the numbers started lining up, as the client got excited, as the whispers about a record contract spread, I could see his eyes change. On Monday morning, my calendar was full. 3 prep calls, a compliance review, and a final client alignment session. By Wednesday, those meetings had disappeared. I wasn't uninvited, they just vanished. A system message said, "You no longer have access to this series." I asked our coordinator. She shrugged. Direction from Patterson. Thursday evening, an email landed. Subject: Team adjustment for optics. The body was 2 sentences. Thanks for your hard work to date. For the sake of balance and visibility, we'll have the exec team carry the presentation across the line. Please stand down. No call, no explanation. Just like that, 14 months of my life boxed up and pushed off stage. I wanted to believe it was temporary, maybe just boardroom politics. But Friday afternoon, as I was clearing my folders, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The system flagged an activity. File copied. Patterson board, prep, PPTX. It wasn't subtle. He hadn't even changed the path. He had taken the very deck I'd been refining, the one stitched together from my models, and put his name on it. That night, I barely slept. I opened the file history again and again, hoping I'd misread it. But there it was. His account, his access, his copy. I sat at my kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, staring at the screen, trying to decide if this was real betrayal or just office maneuvering. And then the thought hit me. If he was willing to steal the deck, he was willing to stand in front of the board and say every line I'd written as if it came from his own head. I looked around my apartment. Half unpacked binders, notebooks full of scribbled formulas, receipts taped to pages like war evidence. All of it could vanish if I let him tell the story first, and that was the moment I knew. Patterson wasn't just cutting me out. He was about to steal the whole damn deal, and if I didn't move fast, he might actually get away with it. If someone plans to steal your work, give them a version that bites back. That was the line running through my head the weekend after Patterson cut me loose. I didn't rage, didn't call HR, didn't write furious emails. I sat down with my laptop, opened the master file, and started laying out tripwires. First, the model itself. Every financial assumption I'd built was documented in a separate control sheet, invisible unless you knew where to click. I had formulas pointing back to my initials, time-stamped ranges, even a hidden checksum that would only reconcile if the inputs came from my version. Patterson could open the deck, but if anyone pushed the model past a surface glance, the fingerprints would glow like neon. Then I thought about the presentation. I stripped the public version of my notes and embedded a small automation, a footer tag that refreshed metadata every time the file was opened. Most people never notice footers, but if the board asked when it was last modified, my name would appear, not his. By Saturday night, I had 3 safety nets. 1, immutable audit logs from our document control system, complete with hash values. 2, a clean escrow copy on compliance servers, locked by our controller with her signature. 3. An email chain with the client themselves, where they had written in plain English, "We require my name as key contact for delivery." That single line was more valuable than 100 witnesses. I wasn't alone, either. The finance controller, Ruiz, had worked beside me for months. He cared about numbers more than politics. When I showed him Patterson's stand-down note, he shook his head. "That's garbage. Don't delete anything. Keep your diffs." He agreed to log every approval he'd signed off on, just in case. Compliance was trickier. They didn't like drama. But I knew Lewis, our compliance officer, hated shortcuts. Over coffee on Sunday, I explained what was happening, careful not to throw accusations. I just asked him to verify that the version on record, mine, was the one sent to regulators. He scrolled through the metadata, nodded once, and said, "If anyone tries to present a different file, they'll have a problem with me, not you." The final piece was the client. I couldn't risk calling outright. Patterson would smell it. But I sent a quiet update. "Here's the final control sheet you requested, same as discussed. Let me know if you need me on the board call." The reply came an hour later. "Appreciate your thoroughness. As mentioned, contract requires your continued involvement." A single sentence, short, official, undeniable. By Monday morning, Patterson strutted into the office as if nothing had happened. He joked with the execs, slapped shoulders, talked about our presentation. But while he rehearsed stolen lines in the glass conference room, I was at my desk finalizing the audit log, emailing myself secure digests, and making sure every breadcrumb was in place. He thought he'd sidelined me. In reality, I was wiring the whole boardroom like a trap. And when he finally clicked "present," those wires were going to light up. By Friday, I had no calendar, no access, and an email saying, "Stand down." At first, I thought it was a glitch. Outlook sometimes eats invites, right? But by the third day in a row of watching my calendar bleed white, I knew it wasn't an accident. My recurring client calls, gone. The internal prep syncs, disappeared. Even the war room channel I'd built from scratch was now private, with me outside looking in. When I asked Patterson about it, he leaned back in his chair, smiled, and said, "We just want you to rest up. You've been burning too hot. This is for your own good." The kind of tone managers use when they're not giving you a choice. The gaslighting came next. He started dropping lines in meetings, the ones I was still allowed to attend, about how I'd been looking tired, and how it might be better to give someone else the baton for the final sprint. People nodded because what else could they do? He controlled the room. Then HR called me in. Not a warning, not a reprimand, just a check-in. The rep asked if I was coping with the workload. I knew where that came from. I smiled, said yes, and showed her my logs. Late-night edits, audit entries, client calls. She nodded, made notes, and never followed up. HR never does when it's between an exec and an employee. But I wasn't about to play dead. Every change Patterson made, I documented. Every deleted invite, every altered file path, every adjustment. Screen captured, time-stamped, and stored in an encrypted folder only I could access. I became my own archivist, because I knew the day was coming when I'd need proof. That day came sooner than expected. A junior staffer accidentally sent me the rehearsal deck for Patterson's dry run. When I opened it, my heart dropped. Slide after slide, it was my work, my phrasing, my forecasts, even my exact examples. He hadn't rewritten a thing. He'd just stripped my name off the notes. Worse, he botched the delivery, reading my lines without context, stumbling over acronyms, skipping the compliance phrasing I'd worded to the syllable. I sat there, fists clenched, listening to him butcher 14 months of my life. That night, the client sent me a short, guarded message. "We'll only sign if the person who built this is in delivery." Just one sentence, but it told me everything. They knew Patterson was faking it. They weren't fooled. I read that message 3 times, then leaned back in my chair. My trap was working. The question now wasn't whether Patterson would try to steal the deal. The question was whether I'd be ready to spring it in front of the board. And ready or not, board day was already on the calendar. He clicked, "Present." My deck opened, with my initials still stitched into the model. The boardroom was cold in that way expensive rooms are. Polished oak table, ceiling vents humming, water bottles lined like soldiers, 12 directors in tailored suits, a CEO who barely blinked, and Patterson at the head of the room, grinning like he'd already won. I sat 3 seats back, officially an observer. My badge still opened the door, but barely. He hadn't even looked at me when I walked in. Patterson cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to see is the most exciting contract this company has pursued in the last decade." He clicked. The first slide appeared. My slide. Same title, same formatting quirks I'd carried across 100 late nights. Even the color code in the margins. My private consistency check. He strutted through the opening like a politician rehearsing applause. But as soon as the questions began, the cracks showed. The CFO asked, "What assumptions are you carrying on foreign exchange volatility?" Patterson hesitated, scrolled 3 slides too far, then stammered something vague about hedging strategies in line with industry practice. I almost smiled. Industry practice wasn't what I'd built. I designed a layered hedge tailored to the client's markets. Anyone who dug would know he was bluffing. Still, he tried to glide over it, dropping buzzwords, name-checking regions he'd never set foot in. Every time he hit a phrase that didn't land, my stomach tightened. These were my words, but twisted, drained of meaning. Then came the risk share. This model. Who validated it? Patterson adjusted his tie. I oversaw the validation personally, with our finance controller supporting. From the corner of my eye, I saw Ruiz shift in his chair. He didn't speak, not yet, but his silence was louder than anything. Slide after slide, Patterson tried to power through. The directors leaned back, some skeptical, some polite. But the room wasn't with him. He didn't know it yet, but the oxygen was already leaving. Then the moment hit. The chairwoman of the board looked down at the agenda and said, "We have one outstanding technical query on the service level metrics. Who authored the projections?" Silence. Patterson opened his mouth, closed it again, then forced a laugh. "Our team effort, of course." The chairwoman's eyes flicked toward me. "You there? You've been quiet. You worked on this?" Every head turned. Patterson froze. I felt the weight of 12 stairs, the hum of the vent louder than breath. I knew this was it, the opening I'd been waiting for. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "Yes, I can answer that." And just like that, the board gave me the floor. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the audit log. The chairwoman gave a nod, and the room shifted toward me. I slid the printout from my folder, the one I'd triple-checked at 2 a.m., and placed it squarely on the table. "This model wasn't validated by Patterson," I said evenly. "It was validated by Ruiz, our controller, on March 17th, 9:42 p.m. The audit log shows the exact time, hash, and checksum. Would you like to see it?" The CFO leaned forward immediately. Patterson tried to wave it off with a chuckle. "We don't need to get lost in technical weeds." But I kept going, voice calm, surgical. Every forecast is locked with a digital signature. Every adjustment is logged. And here, I tapped the page, is the automated attribution footer. Watch. I reached for the laptop. One click, and the footer refreshed on screen. Author, my name. Time-stamped, immutable. It flickered across the bottom of Patterson's deck like a watermark from hell. The directors murmured. One of them actually laughed under his breath. Patterson flushed crimson. "That's just formatting." "Formatting doesn't sign contracts," I interrupted. "Clients do. And this client sent an explicit requirement. Delivery led by the architect who built the model. I have that confirmation in writing." I slid a second sheet across the table. The sentence was short, but it detonated like dynamite. "We require my name as key contact for delivery. Signed, dated, undeniable." The wrist chair frowned at Patterson. You assured us leadership continuity was secured. You knew about this clause? He stammered something about team spirit and delegated execution, but the air had already shifted. The room wasn't his anymore. And then came the final blow. The speakerphone at the end of the table lit up. "Apologies for joining late," came the crisp voice of our client sponsor. "I just want to confirm for the record, our award is contingent on my name leading delivery. If that changes, the deal is off the table." The silence afterward was absolute. You could hear the vent hum, the shuffle of a pen, the sound of Patterson's throat closing. The chairwoman turned slowly. "Mr. Patterson, can you explain why the board was not informed of this?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. No jokes, no charm, no grin to save him. The legal counsel cleared her throat. "Given the inconsistencies and misrepresentation, I recommend freezing the vote, pending a full compliance review." The CEO didn't argue. He just nodded once. Security wasn't called. Not yet. But the look on Patterson's face as the board shifted away from him said enough. His career wasn't wounded. It was over. And me? I hadn't even raised my voice. The motion passed, with a new condition. Me. The chairwoman folded her notes, looked around the table, and said what I'd been waiting 14 months to hear. "This contract proceeds with my name as lead architect of record, effective immediately." No one objected, not even Patterson. He sat rigid, lips pale, staring at the water bottle in front of him as though it could save him. But the board had already moved on. They weren't discussing him anymore. They were discussing me. Milestones, delivery oversight, next steps. Within an hour, HR escorted him quietly out of the building. No dramatic shouting, no slammed doors. Just a man stripped of his power, walking toward the lobby like a shadow of the executive who had once strutted through it. That afternoon, Ruiz clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Told you to keep your diffs." Lewis from compliance gave me a rare half-smile, the kind of expression that meant more than any formal congratulations. The client called me directly that evening. "Glad you're the one staying on," they said. "Otherwise we were walking." The relief in their voice was almost worth more than the contract itself. Almost. By Friday, the deal was signed. $80 million. There's a record for the company. My name was on the signature block, my initials on the control sheets, my fingerprints everywhere they belonged. For once, the credit wasn't stolen. It was mine. And karma? Karma didn't need me to lift a finger. Word spread fast. Within 2 weeks, industry newsletters were running polite euphemisms. Executive resignation. Pursuing other opportunities. The whispers filled in the blanks. Tried to steal a deal, caught red-handed, never to be trusted again. Meanwhile, my promotion letter arrived. Director, Strategic Programs. Bigger office, bigger paycheck, but more importantly, authority. Authority to make sure the next Patterson didn't get the chance to pull the same trick on someone else. The night the ink dried, I walked out of the building into the cool air, contract folder under my arm. The city lights shimmered on the glass towers, and for the first time in months, my chest felt light. 14 months of work, 14 months of doubt, gaslighting, and sabotage. And in the end, the boardroom didn't remember Patterson's grin. They remembered the audit log, the clause, the facts. They remembered me.